today as a little demo. So you should have a purple line that you can drag on this continuum.
Yep, I got it.
And you'll see the link keep popping up in the chat because I have to keep posting it as new people join us. So if you're just joining us, feel free to join the Pear Deck if you want to, or just like yesterday, if the Pear Deck's too much to handle, you can just feel free to respond in the chat. That is absolutely fine. There is no pressure. So.
And welcome, Sarah, and thank you for going.
No problem. I just told everybody to go take a bio break and grab a cup of coffee since we were probably going to be waiting for a minute for folks to join us. So.
Yeah, we had our grantee panel session was so full and overflow of questions, so we were rushing to hurry up and wrap up. Thank you. Thank you again.
Good. I'm sure that means it was high value.
Yeah, so. It really was. Very much so.
Good. I don't mind. Doesn't bother me. Patrick and I were just catching up about our families and getting to know each other. Yes, Corey, it does. Absolutely. Yeah, you can join the Pear Deck on your mobile using Join PD. Thanks for sharing that, Corey. Yeah, if you want to join on your phone, you can use the browser on your phone and just hit it, just type in Join PD into the browser on your phone and type in that code in the upper right. Thanks, Corey. I think I get so used to students all being on laptops that I forget sometimes about the Join PD option. So feel free. Yes, and Pear Deck is very mobile friendly, which is one of the things I love about it. So I'll put that link in there one more time if you want to join. Oh yeah, Taya shared the updated handouts. And we are going to get started in just a minute. So Taya shared the updated handouts with those additional tools that you all asked for yesterday. So at the bottom of day 2, you'll see some links and some additional tools that we had talked about yesterday that folks wanted a link to. So we shared those on there as well. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm sure we'll still have some folks joining us. Taya, do you mind sharing the link to the Pear Deck if we have folks join us after we get started?
Sure. Awesome. I'll just drop it in periodically.
Yeah, thank you so much. So let's go ahead and get started since we have such a good number of folks. And again, you can join Pear Deck on your mobile device by in your browser on your mobile device, just going to joinpd.com and using the code in the upper right-hand corner, or you can use the link in the chat on your laptop. Or if it's just too much to juggle, you can definitely just comment in the chat when we ask questions. You don't have to use Pear Deck. It's just a demo and a way to get involved. So you will see a purple line on your screen if you're in the Pear Deck. And this is just an example of a stress check, a social emotional learning kind of check-in to see where students might be when they come into your session. So the great thing is all those purple lines that you're moving around show up on the screen. And I think the original text on the slide from Pear Deck was like, I'm struggling today and I can't focus emotionally or something like that. I adjusted the language just a little bit for all of you. The dragging the icon option is one of those pro versions we talked about, or pro features we talked about yesterday. But as I also shared yesterday, if you have a slide that already has that functionality, like the social emotional learning templates, you don't need the pro version to do this. I don't have the pro version and it works just fine. So just remember that. Well, it looks like our participants are a little all over the place today. Looks like today's been a little bit of a struggle, but you're still able to focus for the most part. We do have a few folks. Oh, we got one person all the way on the right, like off the slide on the right. If you need to stand up and stretch, grab a cup of coffee, whatever you need to get through the end of your day today, please feel free to do that. You do not have to sit in a desk at a chair while we're doing these types of sessions. You can feel free to just turn your camera off and stand up and stretch for a little while if you need to. But it looks like most of you are right there in the middle. There's a few of you that are in that really good space, ready to focus. So we're going to keep this really active for you today and help you focus even though you're tired and it's a little bit of a struggle. And the first thing we want to do is just get kind of your top takeaway from yesterday or this morning. What is the one goal you have for your work based on either yesterday's sessions or the sessions you went to this morning? And Taya, I just realized I'm not sure we are recording this.
We are recording.
We are. Okay. I didn't
Yeah.
see the recording go on, so I just wanted to make sure. Just
Yeah.
checking in. So let's take a minute and think about what our big takeaway was from yesterday or from this morning, or what question you still have for today that you want to make sure we address. So we're just going to take about 1 minute to answer one of these three questions, either in the chat or in the Pear Deck. We have one goal to use this group to share some templates that you can use of the digital materials that have been created. That's a great, that's actually a really, really good one. I'm a big fan of templates. One thing I would recommend if you're ever looking for templates is if you have a favorite tool like Pear Deck or Google Slides, that you find a couple of people to follow on Twitter. One of my favorites for Google is Jake Miller. He's an Ohio guy, but I just typed his name in the chat. He always is sharing out wonderful templates on Twitter for Google Slides and little tips and tricks. Or if you find a tool you like, follow the tool on Twitter as well, and you'll get great tips. I think that's where I do most of my professional development is on Twitter. Yeah, that entertainment is not engagement. Absolutely. Good. You got a little room to breathe. That's really important that we find that room to breathe. Oh, you have new energy. Yay. I love that. I love that you were grumpy last week and you shook it off and you got a little new energy. So you have a goal of raising engagement. It was useful to see Pear Deck. Absolutely. Yeah, an activity doesn't equal engagement. Just remember that doing more things doesn't always mean students are more engaged. Sometimes you just have to pause and breathe and give them some time and deliver a little bit less stuff to have greater engagement. I'm glad Pear Deck's my favorite. And one person said they want more tips on engagement when people have their cameras off. Yeah, absolutely. And I would like to remind you that, having your camera off doesn't always mean that a student is disengaged. Um, you know, one of my favorite examples is still my son, who is 13 years old. And boy, he hates the webcam, but he is typically very engaged. If the teachers are giving him things to do, questions to answer, things to engage with, even to talk to his classmates, he is right there. But man, he hates having that webcam on. He's super self-conscious. So that's something to remember too, is having some flexibility in that webcam being on. So some general lessons that we learned from emergency remote learning that we talked about yesterday. We learned that we can pursue excellence, but we don't have to pursue perfection. So as we're looking at our goals today and we're trying to set some really smart, measurable goals for ourselves, we don't have to be perfect. But we can pursue excellence. We can up our game a little bit. We can ask students what they think. We talked about data collection yesterday a little bit, and really ask them how they're doing, what they think. And it really takes an attitude shift long term, which we talked about yesterday too, especially in terms of engagement or in terms of the affordances of the online platform. Keep things simple, but not low energy. Let your learners see you and hear you. So give them opportunities. A lot of you yesterday talked about even those small group interactions you've had with a webcam and how you can build relationships through that, and they really feel heard and seen. Encourage your learners to collaborate and talk, which we're going to do some of today. Empathy, both for ourselves and the people around us and our learners is really important. And then take care of yourself, or you can't take care of anyone else, which I know, especially if you are a parent or a caregiver in any way, shape, or form, you know how important it is to take that time for yourself. All right, so today we're going to talk about 3 learnings that we've really gathered from our experiences over the last year of emergency remote instruction or blended learning. And the first one is that attitude of continuous improvement and collaboration. The second one is that needs vary, and that learner variability is really the only constant. So we can't look for the norm. We can't look for a typical learner. They don't exist. There's a speaker named Todd Rose, who's out of Cast, who talks about the myth of average. If you've never watched that TED Talk, I would highly encourage you to Google the myth of average. It will change the way you see your learners. But learner variability, the fact that they're all different, is really the only thing we can guarantee. So we're going to talk about that. And then if you want to have good ideas, you have to have many ideas, because not all of them are going to work. And so today we're going to share as many ideas as we can. So learning number 1 is have an attitude of continuous improvement and collaboration. And we can do that by collecting data and feedback often, as we talked about yesterday, with things like Google Forms or an interactive video on Edpuzzle, or a Microsoft form, or some type of share out during meetings, image sharing, video sharing, doing Twitter or Instagram chats or Snapchat conversations. So we can get feedback from our learners. So we're going to do a quick breakout, and at the bottom of your screen, you are going to see a link to this breakout slide deck, which I will also share in the chat. If I can get back to the chat. Thank you, Taya, for sharing that. That was one. Unfortunately, I always have a million ideas as I talk, and sometimes I don't put them in the materials. So I put the link to the share out Pear Deck in the chat. So, or not Pear Deck, I'm sorry, Google Slides. So this is something I do frequently with my learners. When we do breakouts, I don't just send them out to a breakout and they have nothing to produce or to do. They should always have something to do, right? And so what you're going to be doing is you're going to be brainstorming with your group some ideas for what you want to know, when you want to know it, how do you want to collect the data? So what do we need to know about our learners? How do we want to collect data? Because remember, we're looking at that attitude of continuous improvement based on data and feedback that we can get. So what kind of data and feedback do we want? When do we want it? Why do we want it? What are we going to do with it? How are we going to collect it? So on this breakout slide deck, which you will be going to the slide for your group number in just a minute. We're going to break you up into 15 groups. There's quite a few of you. Actually, let's do 10. Patrick, we're only going to do 10 groups because we have 50 folks with us roughly. So this is a sample slide, which I always like to do. We're going to do what's called hexagonal thinking. And so hexagonal thinking means you're first going to start with your group just listing in this little box over here, all of the different things that you want to know about your learners, things you want to collect, feedback you want to collect, all of that. And then once you've listed those things, you're going to start moving your blocks around and putting the things that go together, right? So race and age, these are demographics. So we're going to block those together. So we're going to look for relationships and the type of data we want, and then we're going to explain why we put them together and why we want it. So we're going to give you I'm going to give you 5 minutes and then check in with every group. And then we'll give you up to 10 minutes to work on this together. And then we're going to come back and we're going to share out what we learned a little bit and look at each other's slides to come up with our goals for data collection. So here we go. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And we are going to open up those 10 breakout rooms. Does anyone have any questions before we send you out? I can see Megan's face and Nancy's face and Lori's face. And there's Marianne again. Hi, Marianne from yesterday. Does anyone have any questions before we shoot you out to your breakouts? And remember, if you do, you can call for help in your breakout and I will pop on in there and answer your question. So remember that emergency button in your breakout that you can ask for help. All right. All right, so you're going to get sent out to your breakout rooms. Remember that your slide is the number of your breakout, and we will check in with you in 5 and come back in no more than 10 minutes. All right. All right, so we resumed the recording. So as everyone comes back, I want you to think about a couple of things. I want you to, one, think about the challenges of collaborating in this type of environment and kind of what you experienced and how you would overcome those if you were to do this with learners. The second thing is, think about if you could use an activity like this in a face-to-face environment as well. It doesn't have to be in an online discussion, right? It can be in a face-to-face room where students have devices. And then the third thing is, I want you to think about, is there any benefit to doing it like this, where there is a report out and there's something you have to produce? Did it motivate you at all to talk more or to get down to business, knowing that I could see what you were doing, knowing that we were going to look at each other's work or look at each other's reflections a little bit? You know, did having a structure and knowing that other people were going to look at it, did that motivate the discussion at all? I heard a lot of you saying things like, we're not sure what you're looking for. We're not sure, you know, and I've found that students have a really hard time, and so do adults, with open-ended activities where there's no right or wrong answer quite often. They think there's something right that they're supposed to be doing. But in reality, this is just an opportunity to get talking, right? To get thinking. And so if we go back to our Pear Deck here, I want you to think about the things you talked about, and I want you to take about 2 minutes and look at the hexagonal thinking that all of the groups did. So I am viewing this in the grid view so that when you were working, I could see which groups were working and which groups were struggling very quickly at a glance. But you are most likely in the non-grid view. But go ahead and flip through these a little bit and see if you see any commonalities. See if you see any ideas that your group maybe didn't talk about, places where you could improve your data collection. And we'll come back in 1 minute and kind of think about that. And then you can report out on the Pear Deck slide if you're in Pear Deck, or in the chat if you're not. All right, so let's just share really quickly. What did we learn about how we might be able to improve our own data collection, or what did we discover any types of data that we're not collecting now that maybe we wish we were collecting? Oh, Nancy, you had to look at the other groups and what they were doing to get started. And that's actually helpful when everyone's using the same slide deck, right? You can wait until the one group who understands what they're doing, gets started. You can kind of look around and see what the other groups are working on as they go. And remember, if you did something like this with your participants in a session, this is another way to get feedback, right? You can see this is some good formative data that you can collect on where are they in the process of learning this stuff? Where is their head? Where are they thinking? What are they talking about? And so you can get data even just from what students are reporting out from their groups on slides like this. So let's see what you're saying here. So you do check-ins and polls, but you realize that you don't capture or keep it. Yeah, it might come in handy in the future, right? So what's the flavor of your day? If you did that on a Pear Deck, or you did it on a Google form, or you did it on a Padlet or some type of other report out tool, you could collect that and kind of use it to improve your process over and over again. Yeah, identifying accessibility data. So what challenges are students having in accessibility, or what accessibility needs do they have that you could do a better job of meeting? Yeah, you could definitely get some feedback about learning styles or individual student needs or platforms they're using. What tools do they like to use? That's another thing you could do. So there's lots of data that we can capture from students beyond just demographic data. And there's lots of ways we can get feedback from them and kind of see where their heads are. And so when we're doing that, we need to be open to the criticisms of our learners. So one thing I hate as a teacher is reading my student feedback when I know I did something where I'm like, oh, this did not go the way I wanted it to. But I know I have to look at it because it's an opportunity for me to make positive changes. I know that I can identify patterns. So if I see learners over and over again saying, I'm struggling with this, I'm struggling with that, and I see your hand, Coach G, I will come to you in 1 second. So if I see a repeated pattern, that most likely it's me, it's the activity, it's the way we're presenting it, it's the tool we're using, right? And that if we identify those patterns, we can focus on better improvement. And it may mean us moving away from things we thought worked, but in reality aren't working for our learners. So go ahead, Coach.
No, I was just going to say, to the point that you made earlier, I think one of the most valuable things that came out of this is when using the interactive tools, I think like a time saver would be just saying ahead of time, like, there is no wrong answer, just whatever you think.
Yeah.
Because again, like you said, I know my group was definitely one of the groups where we were like, we're not sure we're doing things right. So, giving that disclaimer beforehand can allow them to have that part out of the way and then make the rest of the time more productive.
Right, exactly. And I learned from that one, right? So I already wrote it down on a little Post-it note for myself. Like when I'm working with adult learners, make sure I tell them they don't have a right answer. Because once I went into your group and I said, it could be this, it could be this, it could be anything, like whatever you want to put down is fine. You all went, oh, and you just ran with it. Mm-hmm. But so often in educational settings, especially, we think, oh, there's a right answer. They're looking for something specific, right? And we think that, oh man, we're going to get it wrong. We're doing it wrong. This whole deficit mentality of we're going to do it wrong really gets in the way of our freedom to respond sometimes. And so I'm glad you acknowledged that. And that definitely next time I'm putting that in my notes to make sure I say it, because it does free people up to just, talk about whatever they need to talk about at that time. And then again, just using that data for continuous improvement. And we saw even in that activity that your needs in that situation varied, right? Yeah, Nancy, your group's responses varied based on, are you more abstract or systematic? There is a benefit to allowing the students to be in groups and have those diverse approaches to the content or diverse approaches to things. We saw that yesterday with the picture we put up. And some people saw an art room and something very positive, and some people saw someone breaking free from something and had a lot stronger emotional reaction to it. And hearing different people's perspectives is probably one of the most valuable things we can do for our learners in building empathy and building social emotional skills. And that learner variability, that's the only thing we can guarantee, right? We can only guarantee that each learner is different, that some of them are going to need more directions, that some of them are going to need more support, that we need to make sure that they're comfortable and confident with using the tools, all of those things, but they're all going to have different needs. And when we think about those different needs, we can think about the how, the why, and the what of learning. And there is a link on here to a document that can kind of explain it. I'm going to share a few resources with you about universal design. But that how, why, and what of learning, right? The how are we learning? So how are we delivering the content? What types of activities are we doing? The why of learning, are we making the why clear for our learners? And are we engaging with their lives? Are we helping them remember it? We talked a little bit yesterday about memory and images and helping them remember. And then that recognition network, right? The what. So what are we learning and how do we show what we're learning? And when we're looking at universal design, we're really thinking through activities like the one you just did, and how can we use activities like that to address not just some data collection and feedback, but also the variability of our learners and give them all an opportunity to learn and to share. And so if you've never experienced universal design before, one of the things that, and Marion has a comment, you always read it and say you're going to do it together with a pre and a post test. So you finish at the same time. Yeah, that's a great tip. Like if it's a short little test, if it's something where reading is involved and you can say, hey, we're going to read it and do it all together. It helps those students that need it, that may have reading difficulties, without making them stand out and without making them be the ones. There's tools like Edpuzzle is that video tool, but there's also another interactive video tool called PlayPosit, where you can add audio to each question. So if a learner is a struggling reader, you can read the question for them. They can click the audio button, or they can read the question and then put their answers in. So thinking through the variability of those learners, Marianne, is really important. That's a great tip. So how are we working? How are we working on making sure our learners are engaging, that they know the why, that they feel like they can be successful? Are we giving them good checklists? Are we giving them resources to take with them? Are we connecting it to their lives through images and stories? Are we allowing them to use images and tell stories? All of those pieces. Multiple means of representation. So are we using the multimodal learning? Are we using images and videos and text and activity and all the different ways, self-paced and synchronous things we do together at the same pacing? So how is that information being presented to learners? But then also the how of learning, right? So how are they being expected to express themselves? If it's only in writing, if it's only by speaking up in front of an entire group, are we giving them options in how they are expressing themselves? And I want to ask you just really quickly, which of those, you're having technical issues. That is okay. We know a lot of people are. It just started dumping down snow here, so hopefully I won't have them too. So which of these three, principle 1, principle 2, or principle 3, which of these do you feel like is your biggest challenge right now in meeting the needs of your learners, and you really need to set some goals around it or have some strategies for it? So which of these three, multiple means of engagement, that why they're learning it, that keeping them motivated, the what, so your materials and your strategies for delivering them, or that action and expression, that how they're demonstrating their learning? Can you see that they're able to learn it? Are they being given choices to express themselves? So we see a handful of ones in the chat. It looks like 1s and 3s primarily in the chat. Let's see what our folks online are saying. More 3s, yeah. Yeah, 1 and 3 do kind of go, or 1 and 2 do kind of go together. And in reality, they all kind of go together when we look at them, right? And I teach an entire semester long class on universal design for learning. So there's a lot more that you can dig into in terms of resources around this if anyone wants to learn more about how to apply this. But this is a good starting point to think through, like, yeah, the why and the what of learning. If we're delivering a really good variable multimodal what that has the why built in, that connection to their lives, that connection to each other, that immediate satisfaction or the long-term satisfaction, they can see the significance and the importance of it, then those two things definitely, and in all honesty, all three principles overlap, Coach. I mean, they really do. I know I keep calling you Coach because I can't remember what the G stands for. I'm so sorry. I know
No, it's my fault. It's Grady. It's
Great.
my other job. I'm often on Zoom so much I leave it that way. So that's my fault. Let me change.
Okay. No,
Grady.
you're okay. I just feel bad calling you Coach, but
Tom Brady, but with the G, Grady.
awesome. That will help me remember. Thank you.
No
But yeah, we're
problem.
seeing a lot of 1s and 3s that I feel like you all are pretty comfortable when I look at these numbers with how you are delivering your content, but maybe where you want to set your goals are around how am I really giving students that why, and am I giving them different ways to express themselves and what they're learning? So it sounds like those are really where your goals are. We took a lot of time with that first breakout session. So I think rather than go to another breakout, we're just going to talk together. I know we also started just a few minutes late because of the panel. So when we're thinking about universal design for learning, here's another example of a breakout report out set of slides. But if you look at the document that I gave you on here, on that slide deck, and this is also in the resources that Taya shared. So if you don't have the Pear deck, you can find it on the slide deck. These key questions, or I mean, on the resources, this key question to consider is a great checklist. So if you felt like you were struggling with the engage piece, are you giving them ways to regulate their own learning? Are you helping them sustain effort and motivation? And all that means is, do they know what's expected of them? Do they know what the takeaway is at the end? Do they have a goal sheet they can take with them? Do they have resources they can use later? Do they have a way to report back to you if they're struggling? All of those things can help our learners persist. And then when you look at the 3 down here, which was the other one you said you struggled, are we giving them opportunities not just to be active, but to act strategically? Are we giving them ways to express themselves that they're comfortable with? So should they be creating memes together? Should they be using images to explain how they're feeling, right? Does it have to be in front of everyone? Can they physically respond? Can it be anonymous? All of those things may be able to help our variable learners express themselves and respond. Corey asked if you can insert links into Edpuzzle so someone has to complete an outside task before returning and resuming. Not right now. So you would have to probably break the video like into 2 different pieces. So you would have one video and then an outside task and then another video. It doesn't really have a way to break the video up and send them out to do something else and come back. But you can mash multiple videos together. But Corey, if you have like a Google Classroom or a Canvas page or a learning management system the school uses, you can do a little bit more of that. And I can answer that question at the end if you need me to answer it in a little more detail. But we really do need to think about our learners and what unique needs they bring to the table and how we can meet those. And then the last thing, since we're running so short on time, I'm just going to leave you with this quote, that if you want to have good ideas, you have to have many ideas. And I think the very first step is coming to things like this, following people on Twitter, exchanging emails if you found someone in one of these sessions that you want to talk to later outside of here. Looking for free professional development, which is happening all over the place. I would challenge everyone to set a goal for yourselves of attending occasional free professional development on tools or ways to engage learners or problem-based activities. There's so many things out there. And again, I am heavily dependent on Twitter to find my PD. But maybe you have other resources within your professional groups that you can share before we leave of where you find out about these additional free resources that you might be able to take advantage of to up your game. So Taya, I know there's a lot more, not a lot more. We kind of flew through most of the end. But hopefully that gives everyone at least some resources you can take with you and do some goal setting for yourself. And it challenges you to go to some places that you haven't before to explore how you can improve your practice, particularly data collection and feedback, universal design for learning, and then just getting yourself out there to collaborate and hear from others who are experts in the field. But yeah, does anyone have any questions? I feel like we've rushed the end a smidge, but I want to make sure we have at least a couple minutes for questions. Corey, I absolutely can talk to you a minute about that if no one else has any other questions. So Taya, anything I missed?
No, I mean, you did a great job of tearing through that.
So sorry.
Getting all the key points. No, it was wonderful.
Well, we're just going to have to come back. So I know I am doing an office hours in March as a follow-up to this session. So anything where you're like, dang, I wanted to talk about UDL more, or you get out there and you start looking at it and you think, oh, I've got questions, look for those RTI office hours. And I am going to be at one of those coming up. So you can pop back in and get some more questions answered. So thanks, Gracie. Now that I have your name and I can remember it. All right, awesome. Does anyone else have any questions, or I'll address Corey's question? No, we're good. Okay. Corey, do you know if the learners you work with, do they have is there a learning management system or some way for you to deliver content to them through the school system?
So our program is a little bit different, and it's difficult because a lot of people seem to be in a classroom setting or have access to students directly. Whereas if anybody remembers from the previous panel, our boss Ginger actually talked about Baby Safe. So a lot of what we do is recruitment. And then we also have very strict guidelines for fidelity. So we're trying to figure out, like, we can't be creative in the content that we share, the pictures that we bring, the flexibility of people sharing just different ways to express themselves because of the trauma-informed piece behind the sexual health that we implement. So we have a very, very, very narrow guideline and path. The good thing is that we discovered Pear Deck at the beginning of our virtual transition, and we love Pear Deck, especially the ability to be anonymous, especially in a sexual health setting. So it's encouraging to know that we've done a lot of things that have brought that diversity to the learning space. We're just trying to figure out how to make it better and make it more accessible to people that don't have access to the same resources that we, for example, the 2 devices, we encourage them to be on Zoom and then do Pear Deck on their mobile device. Right. But we worked with a community-based organization that only had most people on phones for Zoom, which posed a huge barrier. So we just took out Pear Deck altogether and did a live presentation.
Yeah, you sometimes have to, you know, and you just have to read your audience. And I remember I asked Taya before we started this session, I was like, can we do Pear Deck? Is it going to be something that's manageable? And that's when we said, no, let's make it optional. You know, you can or you don't have to, so you're comfortable, and you just kind of have to read your group. I know when I was working with the Healthy Native Youth Organization, that a lot of their students they work with only have one device, and it's a phone, and that is it. You know, so we had to look a little bit differently at that. And that's where you may have to consider those asynchronous tools like Edpuzzle that they can do on their own time, on their own device. You know, there's other ways to deliver content. Like I put a few content delivery tools if you don't have access to a Google Classroom or Canvas or something through a school.
That really does help.
Yeah, Genially is great if you want to create like interactive images that they're engaging with on their own. There's a great free tool called, and these are all on the list. There's a great free tool called Sutori, which it's technically a timeline creation tool, but you don't have to use it for that. It just allows you to deliver things in a really linear way, basically on what looks like a website, but there's interactivity in it. I'm sorry? You
said Sutori?
Sutori, yeah. And it's on that list that Taya just gave in the chat. And then there's higher end tools. You know, if you have a budget, I would highly recommend, if you don't have access to school systems and you're trying to deliver virtual training, there is an Articulate tool called Rise, but I think it's around $800. You know, it's not cheap, but if you have a budget, it's probably the easiest rapid authoring tool I've seen, where you can control, like, you got to do this before you can do this. And there's like pacing to it. And it
Is that a one-time purchase or is that a subscription?
I would have to look. And it's not on the list because I usually only share free tools on the list, but
Okay,
it's called
perfect.
Articulate Rise.
Okay.
And it's, if you've ever heard of Storyline for rapid authoring, which is a high-end rapid authoring tool, it's by the same people, but this one allows you to create something more like a website where they can go, or you can embed it into your website. So yeah, there's all kinds of different ways to deliver content. And unfortunately, I could talk about it for about 3 hours if we had it.
Is your contact information, would you mind dropping your email in the chat? I
Yeah.
think because of the dynamic in which we work, maybe like a more one-on-one conversation, trying to figure out, because this is also really great for sustainability purposes of not having to create new means to deliver certain things and meet people where they're at. And I think that's where we're kind of shifting focus, because we're having a hard time reaching students when we're available.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know I should reach out to the Family Tree Clinic, which is one of the clients in this group. I don't know if anyone from Family Tree is on here right now, but they have had some success using Genially for some kind of self-paced interactive images that they can have their learners go through and that sort of thing. And it's great because you can just get an embed code and slap it on your website, or you can share out a link. And it's, my 7th grader can use it and make stuff that looks really cool. So if he can do it, I can do it. And it's free, which is a nice one. And that is on the list as well, but it's Genially, and the period is supposed to be in there in the chat. So, you know, there's just so many tools out there. You just have to kind of think about, that's the one thing I would say, is think about what is your purpose? Who is your learner? What's your goal? And then choose the right tools for it. You know, because there's so many out there that tool selection really depends on devices, tech savviness, and then, you know, what's the purpose? What, you don't want to buy, you know, something expensive when you can do it with something free for the purpose that you need. So yeah, Grady, sorry, go ahead.
No problem. I'm going to beat the dead horse again a little bit
Go
because
for
I
it.
think we have so many people here who have so much experience with all these different tools. I think, again, if we can get like some kind of a shared drive where people can kind of have like walkthrough experiences of things that have already been made, and then they can determine what's best for the populations they work with. I just feel like, you know, a meeting this big is a really good chance for a mastermind, so to speak, you know, to really be able to help each other out.
I think Taya is your mastermind in here.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not your mastermind, but I connect with masterminds.
Okay. Okay, good to know.
And so I know, based on when you asked that question during the grantee panel, I have a separate chat. You see me looking over here with my colleagues, and they are doing masterminding right now, but what they can put together as kind of that centralized hub for those type of things. So at some point you'll be getting an email from us regarding that and what our features will be and how you can access it and all that good stuff.
You guys are awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We try.
Oh
Well,
my goodness gracious.
I want to thank you, Sarah. I mean, it's been wonderful. This time flew by so quickly, which is
It
a
did.
good
It
thing
went so
and a
fast.
terrible thing.
I had so many more things I wanted to do. But
So
I'm just going to hang on to it for the office hours and it'll already be there. So
Yes. It'll probably be the most popular office hours ever.
oh my gosh, we have like a blizzard outside. I'm so distracted. I keep looking over my screen because we're in like the middle of a whiteout and we already have 7 inches on the ground. So I'm not looking forward to leaving my house right now. Yes, this doesn't happen in Cincinnati, just so you know. No one can drive in an inch of snow. So I don't know how we're going to go anywhere for the next week. Sorry, Taya, I'm distracted. Go for it.
Well, thank you again. It has been a pleasure. We thank you for all of the information and the tools and the energy and passion that you brought to this session. We are so appreciative of it. And we will be in touch. And if we get any questions, we'll definitely share those with you. And thank you again. And to everyone else, if you're going to participate in the next session, it'll be starting at 3:45. Let's see, if you are an administrator, you'll hop on the other Zoom link. And if you are a facilitator, I believe you can come back to this link and you'll meet with, let's see, I think Child Trends is leading that session, and it'll be creating and sustaining partnerships during COVID for program facilitators. And the other one is developing strong partnerships for program administrators. So thank you again. Hope you can do a quick refresh and you'll see everyone in the next few minutes. Thank you, Sarah. Bye, everyone.